Why do we suffer?
We have all faced valleys in our lives. Some of our valleys have lasted our entire lifetime. Some last for years and some last for a short time. There are a lot of reasons why these things happen. So be very careful judging individuals and saying, well, this happened to you and so you deserved it, or God is punishing you. Hopefully, most of us have outgrown those thoughts by now.
As creators, we create with our thoughts, our imagination, and our creativity. We can take complete control of our individual consciousness and directly work on what we create. When we bring others into the picture, things get a little more complicated. For example, let's suppose that you are building a house with other people. One may feel boredom with the project, and one may be jealous of you. One may want to do things very differently than you intend. Then it will be more difficult for you to control the outcome. Our collective consciousness works in this manner as well. As a community of humans on planet Earth, we are creating individually and we are creating together. Unfortunately, we have those, like the example given earlier, where they do not contribute with positive feelings, integration, and love. We have, over the years, seen how greed, power, and negativity have created destructive things on this planet. This creation goes down to even the thought level. This is why we should check our random thoughts to be sure that they are our own. Sort through these thoughts with discernment, forgive others and yourself, and let go of the negative thoughts and feelings. Inner work is essential to our mental well-being. This comes easier to some than others. Perhaps you have met that person that just seems to carry joy around with them despite dark or different situations. Some people innately understand that you need to live in the moment and be sure that you do not carry around unfinished business from the past with you. When you do live in the present, those things do not weigh on you. Also, some are able to more easily recognize that some thoughts are not their own, but they are coming from the collective consciousness, and they dismiss them and they choose then to create. Collective consciousness is affected by those that are part of our world, those who think negatively or in a predatory way, and those who are more positive and loving. Discarnate spirits, those who have passed on, and either feel that they have unfinished business, or those who have an agenda and have not let go or have forgiven themselves or others. Other beings in 4D or higher. As we move up the spectrum of density, they tend to be more positive and less destructive. They seem to understand integration and unity much better. Why suffering or bad things happen have many reasons. We have made an agreement before we came into this lifetime to experience something for ourselves or even for the benefit of others. Perhaps even those we made an agreement with need to learn the lesson or experience what it is like to be around you experiencing something. For example, a child who only lives for a few years greatly impacts the life of their parents and family. There could have been an agreement to only stay a short time in this lifetime and die from a disease to either teach those around them or experience this for themselves.
They can happen because we just happen to be in a situation where we have lowered our frequency and we are really not having a good attitude and we make ourselves vulnerable. We could also be in the wrong place at the wrong time, not necessarily deserving what happens to us, but again, because we have had an attitude that we've had, or we're under a great deal of stress or strain, that we become susceptible to those things. I'd like to say that without the matrix being darkened, that they would happen only if we brought them on to ourselves. However, we live in a matrix that you could call hijacked. So there are lots of reasons why these things can happen. I've had a couple of valleys in my own lifetime. One such valley was an injury that I sustained, an injury that could have been much worse, an injury that could have left me paralyzed. I had a lot of strange symptoms and things that didn't make a lot of sense at the time. I received a chiropractic adjustment and something went very wrong. I actually wasn't supposed to receive the adjustment, and on my intake form I wrote in all capital letters, "No adjustments." I was actually there to get a massage. Unfortunately, the chiropractor at the time wasn't paying attention, and they took both my husband and myself back and adjusted me very quickly and very hard. In that moment, my whole world changed. But I'm still me. And it's important to remember that we can do a lot of healing. After having this injury, I had these very strange attacks that were labeled everything from, mini strokes to Chiari. All these doctors had different opinions as to what was going on with me. I had one doctor who told me that my neck was mildly dislocated, but that he would never say it in court. He would deny it. And the reason for this was because it was done by another doctor. In fact, the first MRI that I had done, other than saying that I had a herniated disc, said it was basically normal. This doesn't look normal. When I finally found a specialist that really explained to me what was going on and what would happen, all of my strange symptoms made sense. I had drop attacks. It felt like my spinal cord had a funny bone. I choked on everything, including my saliva, in the middle of the night. I couldn't turn my neck. I had nerve pain down the left side of my body, weakness. I lost a feeling in my hands. So shaking hands now for me is just an awkward thing. I spent the first year pretty much in bed and didn't do a whole lot. These strange attacks continued, and in some respects they did sometimes look like a stroke, sometimes look like, some sort of autonomic disorder. The left side of my face would droop, and sometimes I couldn't speak, or my left eye would droop. I would break out in a sweat. My heart rate and blood pressure would soar. I would pass out or almost pass out. And so it wasn't a fun thing. It wasn't easy to continue in the career that I had at the time. I was faculty, and my schedule completely changed. I had also just started a children's charity, which was something that I had wanted to do for many, many years. So at the time when this particular incident happened, everything had fallen into place in my life. I had just been married literally weeks before this happened. And I had just returned from another country doing our first charity event, which I was so excited about. And I had so much going on and so many wonderful things in my life. And then this happened. And it meant that I had to completely stop and reevaluate everything in my life. Looking back now, I realize that I was burning the candle at many ends, and that perhaps slowing down was a good thing. After 7 years of going to specialist after specialist, sometimes driving hours to get their opinion as to what was going on with my neck and these strange attacks that I had, I still could not get a doctor to agree with another doctor. I finally gave up and just decided that I would live with it. I went back to my roots. One of the degrees that I completed was in the alternative field. And so nutrition, alternative medicine, and herbology was what I turned to. And I see that it actually helps more than conventional medicine did. And so I have learned to manage my energy a little more wisely and to spend my time on what really matters. And I did have the tendency of wanting to serve everybody and do everything for everyone. And after my injury, this was something that I had to seriously take another look at and realize that my energy and time is valuable, and that I can't just give away all of my energy to everyone else and do what everybody else needs to have done. This was certainly a lesson that you don't want to learn the hard way. Along the way, I've also been able to help others. I've met others who have been harmed in a similar manner. So even if we experience something that is very negative, harsh, seems very unfair in our lives, it can still be used for good. It can still help others. We can still learn and grow from those circumstances. And this is what we mean by not being a victim of what happens to you.
One example of this possibility is about someone that I called my first earth angel. Sometimes the tragedy in our lives serves an unexpected purpose. When I lost my first son, Alexander, my heart shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. I felt as if a piece of me died that day. My body failed me, and I would have given my life to bring him back. Even worse, I felt him die inside of me. I got a chill throughout my body, and I knew he was saying goodbye. I felt him leave. Then I had to wait for his tiny body to emerge from mine. When he did, I saw his transparent chest with a tiny heart, tiny legs, and arms with hands. He was curled up, and there was still fresh blood in the umbilical cord, and I was numb. I was also alone at the time because my husband was at work. It was truly a lonely moment. In fact, the rest of the day seemed to move in slow motion. I was emotionally in shock. There would be no funeral because society would not call Alexander a baby. They would call him a fetus. Instead, I looked for ways to remember him. My friend took me to make a glass necklace, and I chose footprints to represent him. I bought a stuffed animal that I would give to my future child as a keepsake in honor of Alexander. Over the next few months, I had struggles. In one instance, my husband and I went out to eat, and a family came in with a baby, and they were seated beside us. I was all right until the baby let out an adorable laugh. It triggered something in me, and I lost it. I couldn't hold back the tears for anything. My poor husband just held my hand and looked sad. However, Alexander gave me a gift. You see, I was someone who had lost my ability to smell as a child, somehow. When I became pregnant with Alexander, I suddenly had super smell. In fact, it didn't go away after Alexander died. At first, I felt a strange guilt for this gift. Of course, I would have rather had no smell and Alexander safe in my arms. However, he came with this gift to give to me. It is one that I will not take for granted. In fact, this gift served an unexpected purpose a short time after we had settled into a new house where we had repairs done. I began to smell gas, which is something I could not smell before Alexander. I told my husband, and he could not smell it. The next day, I called the gas company, and they sent someone out. They used a meter to check for leaks, and indeed, there was a leak. In fact, it was behind our stove. They quickly fixed the leak and then asked how I could smell that. Apparently, the leak was slow, and only over time would it have become noticeable. Some people asked where I got the idea of earth angels. Alexander was the first person that I called an earth angel. We also need to look at many other possibilities and reasons and circumstances that are tied to suffering. The idea that a 4-year-old child must pay with their life and die a horrible death in World War II to pay for a previous incarnation of participating in World War I to satisfy an idea of karma, an illusionary idea of perfection, is ridiculous and unfair. This child, whose memory has been wiped, must now experience pain and suffering to pay for a previous idea of sin and karma It's unjust and twisted and, well, sadistic. A small child being tortured, thrown against a wall, gassed in a gas chamber, and the myriad of other ways that children were tortured and murdered is disgusting. And we need to reject the idea that we somehow owe our soul growth to tragedy and suffering. It is time to understand that this trap of karma needs to end, and we need to consciously break those agreements and say no. Consciously decide that all is forgiven and let go. Sometimes suffering can happen to catch our attention and change our path. You could be in the wrong place at the wrong time. You could be facing something as collateral damage due to collective consciousness. You do not necessarily deserve this, but factors line up that put you in a way of something. It can even happen if you've been stressed, depressed, or struggling. That intention can even align you or make you vulnerable to experience a shared negative event from the collective consciousness. In our world, the collective consciousness is full of various levels of soul development. Other beings or spirit intentions, and even a result of a collective negative agenda or fear. For those of us who do not wish to participate in that negativity, we can become collateral damage of the collective consciousness. You could be carrying the intention of victimhood. If you are in a victim mode, you are sending out intentions of more victim opportunities. You could be sabotaged or influenced by others. Regardless of the reason for something happening, it can always serve as a lesson for growth and integration. Regardless of what we face, we must take personal responsibility and find a way to see beyond the suffering. Our matrix does work on the law of attraction, so some of us have not learned the rules of the game, and this contributes to some of the problem. Since our matrix is hijacked or influenced by those that are dark, we can get things that we don't deserve or would not want to experience. In a more natural matrix, without these negative influences of extremes of what we call evil from our perspective, we could say that you get what you wish for. Human trafficking, pedophilia, sex slavery, cannibalism, torture, and other horrible crimes exist in a world where darkness has gotten out of hand. We do not need the depth of this darkness in order to learn and experience life. We have enough resisting forces within ourselves for discovery. So we must learn to discern and come to understand how this matrix game works. You may have to do some serious inner work and seek out the programming obtained as a child to see if you keep sending out intentions that do not serve you. Also, it's important to note that you can go off script. We have free will, and we can choose to break contract agreements that you may have before incarnating and take control of your experiences. Also, understand that people's experiences are valid. While at a much higher plane, they may see evil differently than we do. A person's suffering is real and valid to them. A child killed in war suffers, and his suffering is valid. In higher planes, they may see our duality like a group of children fighting over the basketball in a game. We must be careful to understand that the depth of evil on this planet has gotten extreme, and it's not appropriate. Eventually, and once beyond this veil, we will see our suffering differently. However, from our perspective, our world and the experiences in it are valid. I, for one, advocate an end to evil. Regardless of the cause of an experience that brings with it suffering, we must remember that we must take responsibility for it. We must choose to make it something we learn from and do inner work to be sure that we align ourselves with a different path after that experience. We must continually move towards what serves us for our higher good. Ultimately, we will never reach perfection in a material world. So forgive yourself, others, and understand that you should do the best you can at the moment with the current understanding and awareness that you have. It is essential to understand that this is not our only lifetime, and so perfection is not the goal, and finding peace, love, and integration is a much better way to progress. It is important that when you leave this life in your current body, that you leave with all forgiven, and that you do not leave unfinished business with others. You can do this if you are continually doing inner work to ensure that you can live in the present with peace and balance. In the past, I've written about how our positive thoughts and feelings emit a higher frequency, and how the negative thoughts and feelings emit a lower frequency. From the energy perspective, if you are emitting these lower frequencies, the matrix will be more likely to send you back more opportunities for negative frequencies or situations that are more aligned with those negative frequencies. Recognizing this can save you from asking by what you are emitting. Understand that this is an unfair matrix, but some have learned to play the game and have begun to manifest more of what they truly desire. This is also one of the ways that those that are dark have been able to gain an advantage over others. While we may leave a lifetime and go to 4D or the afterlife and agree that we may have been selfish or we need to learn to be more selfless, we may not truly understand that agreeing to be born into a family of sociopaths means that it could lead to the death or suffering that we might endure. In that sense, some of the experience in your lifetime can be somewhat like taking out a shark loan. You can agree to it, you willingly accept it at the time, but you do not truly understand the ramifications of how far it can go. It also means that you go through the forgetful veil and thus have no frame of reference as to why you are suffering this way. This cycle needs to change. This doesn't mean that you get to claim victimhood and retreat into darkness yourself, but it means that our current matrix is unfair and rigged to allow the free will of others to impact our free will. Human trafficking or slavery is the largest industry on the planet. One child kidnapped, molested, or sacrificed in a dark cult is one too many, and as positive beings, we say a very big no to these events. Enough of this level of darkness and manipulation. It must stop. Enough to the industries that create destructive energy sources that are harming our planet. Enough to the damage done to our food supply. Enough to the greed that leaves children starving in Africa or a mother dying of cancer. Enough is enough. We must end these extreme negative events. I was assured by my soul family that not everyone in the universe sees this current system as balanced, and I agree. They come from beyond polarity. They know that knowledge without love only allows darkness to thrive. They know that the extreme of darkness is not necessary, and they seek light introspectively and unity in the ultimate state of love. Be assured that eventually darkness must be integrated into the light. All their work to polarize in the power of darkness will be met with the realization that they must abandon darkness in order to continue their existence. In order to integrate back to God's source, those individuals will have to give up their darkness in order to advance. What a moment of realization it would be to say, for example, Ted Bundy, who would have to come to realize the true depth of depravity he has caused his own soul and that of others. He would have had to come to understand that what he did to others, he also did to himself. When we reach that place of complete integration of the Creator Source, we understand how we are all one and connected in our lives. Darkness will not prevail, and light is the only way back to the Creator Source. Eventually, all their depravity must cease. Know that this unfair and great darkness that some have plunged to will end, and they do not get to play this game forever. In the meantime, know that this lifetime is not permanent, and this matrix must not last. We will have the opportunities to experience many other things. Those who are positive will eventually get beyond this rigged matrix to a more balanced existence, where we are not manipulated by the forgetful veil and those who are truly dark. We will see an end to this level of suffering. We will eventually exist in a realm where what we intend is really what we truly experience without manipulation of others or the forgetful veil. On the higher planes, they respect free will on a level that does not occur on this planet. Their rules and directives do not fit our matrix, and we need special exceptions to how we end this darkness on earth. We need to wake up and see that our consciousness needs to grow. It's time for our intentions to change that. It is also important to note that we can get beyond karma and the idea of a sinful nature. We do not have to keep paying karma and returning to get it perfect. That is an unrealistic concept in our material world. It is time for us to move beyond the idea of karma and turn the tables on this matrix. The key is in forgiveness and integrating ourselves with love and peace. Then, when we are told we must pay for our situations, we can be wise enough to say no and mean it, and then be free of this reincarnation cycle where we have been locked into for far too long. We need to outgrow the idea of needing darkness in order to understand light. While there is some purpose in free will to explore and understand other perspectives, the depth of darkness on earth is an experiment in darkness that is not necessary. It is extreme and sadistic. I had a friend who was a scientist, and shortly after his death, he came to me in a dream. He said he had a very important reminder that he wanted to share. And this reminder was about how one such regret was how he felt that he had lingered on the darkness for too long. He showed me his life like a story, and how those times that he concentrated for too long on darkness were like drops of wasted gold. He reminded me not to dwell on the darkness for too long, and to turn and to plant light. You see, he didn't want to be remembered for fighting the darkness. He wanted to be remembered for planting light. Its time is done, and we need to let go of darkness by knowing it is there and acknowledging the responsibility to say no, turn from it, don't dwell on its power, fear, and turning and planting light. That is how we move beyond this darkness. Hell is on earth and around earth. If we graduate, then we will move on to remembering and understanding to a greater level, instead of being trapped in a hamster wheel of forgetfulness and trying to get to a false perfection. Remember that wisdom and love need to be balanced. The extreme of wisdom can lack love. And it's love that brings compassion, kindness, unity, and empowerment. It is love that will bring an end to darkness. We reclaim our creative power. We are not limited as we have been led to believe. We break our soul contracts we made when we agreed to undergo pain, suffering, forgetfulness, limited beliefs, manipulation, a naive understanding of our existence based on the idea of karma, and that we are a free soul to ascend in consciousness and choose a more positive world. We hereby revoke consent for any negative forces from here on out to interfere, lie, manipulate, dominate, control, suppress, or harm us and the human race. We now claim our right as a spark of God's source and choose to be open to a more ascended world where we will have access to the full spectrum of life.